Hello everyone, today I'm going to walk you through how to play Barnburners and Noblemen. This will be a longer video and it'll mostly follow just the directions, but we thought showing a visual representation of how to play would really help a lot of people starting off. So we're going to jump right in, and remember the directions will always be available on our website, so you can check them out there, and obviously in all the boxes there'll be directions. But let's jump in and let's learn how to play Barnburners and Noblemen. So you're going to start by placing the board in a nice open empty here. Make sure there's some space along the sides so people can put their cards and components and pieces. Then as soon as you unfold the board, you're actually going to place the rock. It's this little hex piece right here that has 3 different symbols on the front, and on the back is just our icon. We'll get into what that means and what those symbols do in a little bit. So start by placing the rock and randomly spinning it. I know this sounds weird right now, but it'll make sense later. Randomly spin it and then flip it over. Boom. Also, it's the center 3 hex of the map. There's technically a little statue there. You can see it on the map. Boom. The rock is flipped over. Now it's time to distribute the dice. Each player gets 1 gold 6-sided dice, 1 green 8-sided dice, and 5 attack defense dice, which are those blue and red 2-sided tokens with the red swords on one side and the blue shield on the other. Something to note is that you don't only have to use the 5 attack defense dice. If you have a bigger attack or a bigger defense at any given moment, you can borrow from other players. It's just nice to have a few in front of you, and so that's how we say to set up the game. Next, you're going to shuffle the diplomacy card deck and place it on an empty side of the map. Make sure these are shuffled and no one knows what order they're in. I also like to put the bag of coins next to this shuffled diplomacy card deck. Each set will include a bag of 16 metal coins. This is referred to as the bank in the game. So just place the bag right next to the stack of cards. Players will be grabbing from this bag throughout the game, so make sure it's an easy accessible spot. Next, it's time to choose which base you want. You do this by rolling the 8-sided dice, and whoever wins gets first pick, and whoever gets second highest gets second pick, and so on. Although the bases are almost the same, it's the rock that's adjusted. If you can remember from the beginning when we randomized it, some characters might want to be closer to the attack, some characters might want to be closer to the defense, and some characters might want to be closer to the coin. So that's what helps you decide which base you want. Not every time people are going to care enough to roll for base, but we put it in there just so you can know it's part of the rules. Next step is to draft your team. There are multiple ways to do this, but in this video, we're specifically going to use the 4 teams that we put in the directions as good starting teams for a scenario style. Those 4 teams include Grandeur and Rupert, Valerian and Carmela, Functor and Bancroft, Bilton Grum and the Bilgrams. These teams are balanced, and it's a great way for beginners to really start understanding the game, because it doesn't have any characters with super complex backcard specials. More about that later. Once you have your characters, find the associated character standees for each of the cards. Note, some cards, and in this case, the Bilgrams, have 3 character standees for their 1 card, so make sure you find all 3. Then, select your preferred character base. There are 4 different colors. There's turquoise, there's purple, there's white, and there's orange. You guys can choose to roll which one you want, or you can just choose. It doesn't really matter. These are just there to help differentiate your army with your enemy's armies when they're on the board playing. After you find all your characters' standees and you put them on the base color you selected, now it's time to select your starting 2 character cards. In this game, obviously you only have 2 character cards, so they'll both be starting. But that's important to note, you'll always have 2 character cards out at once. If we had a bigger game with more than just 2 cards, you would have what we call a reinforcements pile. It's basically a pile of your characters who have not been activated yet and have not fought yet, who will come in once your current active characters die. So, for example, if Bancroft's on the field, he dies, and I have a reinforcements pile, I'll put in the next character on the following turn. There's more details about this in the rule book, but for this game, it's not important since you only have 2 total characters. You choose your 2 characters, and then you put the characters on your base. You can put them anywhere on the back row, which of these 4 bases are glowing hexes. If you're playing with 3 people, or an alteration if you want to play 1v1 and you don't want to use any of the glowing hex bases, you can also just use these 2 side bases as well. Next thing you're going to need to do is put wound markers on every character. Something to note is that when characters have a life of 1, you don't actually have to put a wound marker on them, because as soon as they receive 1 damage, they're just removed from the board and are defeated. So for this game, for example, the Pilgrims wouldn't need a wound marker on their card. But everyone else does need a wound marker, and you're going to place it over the heart with the little number on it. What this does is basically lets you keep track and reminds you of how much damage your character has as they progress and start to lose health. Last thing, before we get into the meat of the game, is who gets to go first. This is decided by a roll of the 8-sided dice. Everyone rolls the green 8-sided dice. Whoever gets the highest goes first, and it goes clockwise from there. That way, everyone doesn't have to get up and move again. Now that the game is set up, it's time to start playing. We're going to start with how to read the character cards. These character cards is where the core of the game exists. Every single one of all these character cards are unique, one-of-a-kind playstyles. And when you pair them together, they create another unique, one-of-a-kind team that you can use cool, awesome, original strategies with. Some of these cards have specials that specifically work well against other kinds of cards. All of these cards work together to create numerous different outcomes and ultimate replayability of this game. And we're very proud of every single character. Alright, so the first thing you're going to see is the name. In this case, Valerian Hightower, right at the front. This is not that important. It is cool because each character has a role to play in the lore, but all this does is tell you what the name of the character is. Next thing you'll see on the left-hand side is the skill level. In this case, with Valerian, his skill level is 3. And what this means is basically where they lie on the powerful level in the game. There's skill levels 1 through 3 in this game. 3 are generally the best. 1 are generally the worst. But there are cool elements in our game that means just because you might have a 1 level character versus a 3 level character doesn't mean the 3 level character will always win, because there is chance involved in this game. But it's just good to know, just keep in mind, skill level 3s are generally, always, on paper at least, more powerful than 2s and 1s. Skill level numbers are actually also one of the main ways to draft characters if you're playing a game. So what that means is when you're playing a game where each of you get 10 skill level point teams, it could mean that you might have 8 cards, while your opponent only has 4 cards, or maybe 6 cards. And the idea behind that is, even though there might be different amount of cards, the skill level points are all balanced. And we've worked really hard on this game to balance the characters in a way that it actually works out pretty well in that regard. So anyways, that's skill level. Just to the right of the skill level, you'll see the character differentiator. There are 3 character differentiators in this game. There's a gold H, which means hero, and in this case, that's what Valerian has. Then you have a blue U, which means unique unit, which a lot of characters in the game have. And then you have a green G, which means group card, which always means there's multiple characters or multiple character standees linked to that card. In this case, the Pilgrims are a group card. And if you look on the group cards, next to the green G, there'll always be a number depicting how many character standees are linked with that card. There are a few cases in this game, just a few, where there's a hero or a unique unit who has multiple characters per card. You'll see when they come, but they're very rare. In this game, there's none. Now, we're really quick going to jump over to the bottom right of the card. This is the faction differentiator. For this master set, there's 2 factions, Barnburners and Noblemen. With the expansions, it adds 2 more, Merchants and Alchemists. This just tells you what faction they're a part of. All 3 of these special symbols I just went over, the skill level, the character differentiator, and the faction differentiator, all come into play with certain cards' back card specials. For example, we'll get more into what back card specials are in a second, but I want to mention, Grandor has a back card special that says, while Grandor is attacking a hero or group characters. So, if you're Grandor and you're attacking your opponent, you want to look over to see, are they a hero or are they a group character? Because if they are, his back card special might really be good for you. Same with the faction. It's more rare, but some characters specifically have an advantage against certain factions. With regards to the skill level, that also plays a role in some back card specials, but that's generally used just to tell you the balance of the character and how powerful they are. Next thing we're going to move on to is the basic abilities. That's the move, range, attack, defense, coin, and life. It's important to call these basic abilities because, for example, when you talk about an attack, if you don't say basic attack, that just generally means attack. And some attacks are back card specials or diplomacy cards. We'll get into those later. So it's very important to note whenever you see the words basic attack or basic defense or basic range, etc., it's just important to know this is from the front card abilities right here. So we start with move and range. These two are freely given every turn. It doesn't matter what you roll, you don't have to roll for it, they're freely given. How these work is, say, Valerian here, he has a move of 5. What that means is I can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, up to that. I also can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or I can go 1, 2, or 1, or I don't have to move at all. This is just the amount per turn each one of those characters can move, total, maximum. Range is basically how far away from a character you have to be to attack him. So, Valerian's instance, his range is 1. So that means Functor is here, Valerian can't attack him because his range is how many hexes away he can be from that character. So Functor needs to be adjacent to Valerian for Valerian to attack him. That's basically whenever you see a range of 1, it's basically a melee character, an adjacent character. Again, important to note, movement and range are free every turn for each of your characters. You don't have to roll for it. Next, we're going to move into attack and defense. This is where things get interesting and really fun. These are rolled for, and you use the attack defense dice that you're given at the beginning. So, let's say, for example, let's go back to Valerian and Functor. Let's say they're attacking each other. Valerian comes up on Functor, gives him a first attack. Valerian has an attack of 6. So what that means is he's going to roll 6 of these attack defense dice. And he, in this case, wants red, because every time it hits red, that's an attack that hits. And that's how much Functor has to defend. So, Valerian's going to roll. Okay, in this case, he only got 1. All these other 5 were defenses, so they're whiffed. They don't work. So in this case, what we would say is, oh, Valerian attacked Functor with 1. Functor's like, sweet, I have a defense of 3. It's not great, but I just need 1 blue from that. So then Functor takes his 3 dice. As you can see, they're the same dice, but he wants blue this time. He rolls them, and in this is wild, but he got 3 attacks, which is crazy. That doesn't usually happen. They usually get some blue. But what that means is Valerian hit 1 attack. Functor defended with nothing. He dropped his shield or something. And so that means Functor would lose 1 health. So you go to Functor's card, take his life, which is at 6, and you go down to 5. Boom. So that's how that works. A lot of the game is revolving around that element, the attack and the defense element of the game. People are going up, they're attempting attacks, people are attempting defenses, and as you can tell, obviously a character like Valerian with an attack of 6, that's a really good attack. He's going to most often kill people pretty quickly. Obviously, if he does a lot of these rolls, 1 attack out of 6 dice, maybe he won't. But as you can see, an attack of 6 is way more powerful than, for example, Carmela, who has an attack of 3, because she only can max out at 3 attack potentially. So that's how the attack defense element works in our game. Also, quick note, I know I mentioned this earlier, but as you saw, Valerian had an attack of 6, but he only had the 5 dice in front of him. In instances like that, he can just borrow a dice from another player for that roll. Not a problem. Alright, after attack and defense, you'll see coin with a number or series of numbers preceding it. This basically shows you the odds of getting a coin if you choose to roll for coin. Coin is always decided, almost always, there's a few exceptions, with this gold 6-sided dice. So whenever you see basic coin on the front, what this means is whatever number is on there has to be rolled to acquire a coin when you choose to roll for coin. So let's go back to Valerian, for example. his coin roll is 1 through 3. What that means is he basically has a 50% chance of getting coin when he rolls it because it's on a 6-sided dice. So 1 through 3, half of 6, 50% chance. Other characters, for example, like Functor, have a 1, which means he has to roll a 1 to get coin. So say Functor was wanting to roll for coin. He would roll the 6-sided dice, got a 3, would not receive coin. And most characters, there's few exceptions, most characters must use their action to roll for coin. So as you can see, someone like Functor, it's probably not smart to roll for coin with him because he just has such low odds of rolling for coin. And since his attack is 6, it's like you might as well just go and attack people because coin is not a strategy he should use. I'll get into why coin's important later, but just know if someone has a low coin roll, you generally don't want to roll for coin with them. Alternatively, if some characters have a high coin roll, that often means collecting coin is advantageous for their strategy. Note, some characters, Valerian being one, has a back card special that allows him to roll for coin and attack, basically. It's worded specifically, but there are some characters that can roll for coin and still attack, even though they're not very common. Okay, now that all the basic abilities are done, you can kind of view that as the initial intro, basic half of how characters work. But now we're going to get into the really cool and unique part about every single one of these characters, the things that really set them apart from each other, and that is the back card specials. Before we flip over the card, really quick, I want you to look at the right side of the card. You can see a specials index. It just says specials, and underneath it has a list of that character's specials. In Valerian Hightower's example, he has pedigree and the king's purse. You see the name, but you also see a little symbol next to it. What this little key is on the right side is just to remind you of the specials you have on the back. But it's also there because if you're going to play this game competitively, there's a rule where opponents can't look at the back of your card after the game starts. And so it allows you to have a little bit of mystery in case an opponent forgot, wait, what was that special again? They can't look at the back of the card, but they can look at any part of your front card. And in this case, they can see pedigree and the king's purse. And little symbols next to it tell you what it addresses. So if it's a little gold coin, little hexagon thing, that means it has a special to do with your coin. If it has little red swords and axes, it has to do with an attack. If it has a blue shield, it has to do with the defense. And if it has a little white starburst explosion, that means it's kind of a special attack that doesn't lie anywhere in those basic ability kind of things. And then the last one is a red heart. Not many characters have this, but a few characters have healing powers. And that's what that red heart symbolizes. Again, these are just little symbols to remind you of what the special relates to. But now let's flip over the card where all the specials are explained. I'm actually just going to read through all 8 of these characters' specials and give you a quick synopsis of it, just so you can be super clear on how these characters work. And just keep in mind, there is a lot of variation in all these specials, and sometimes it can get confusing. That's why we specifically chose these 8 characters for you starting the game, so you can kind of get an intro to the world without getting too overwhelmed. But as you start growing and playing with new characters, it's very important to refer to the glossary in our rulebook. There's a special terms glossary in our rulebook that have the definitions of certain words in certain back card specials that'll explain to you, oh, that's what that means. And even further than that, we have a special index which further explains every character's back card specials in more expounded language than what we could fit on the back of these cards. So every letter and every word is very intentional on the back of these cards because they basically tell a story of how these characters work, but we have to make sure they work and they're balanced and they're all symmetrical in the world of Barnburners and Noblemen, so they all work together and there's no confusion on how certain specials work. So let's jump into it. Let's start with Valerian and Carmela, this duo team. So if you look at Valerian, his first special is Pedigree. If Valerian Hightower defeats an enemy hero or a unique unit, he's able to draw a diplomacy card for free. I'm going to talk about diplomacy cards in a little bit, but this is an extremely good special because diplomacy cards generally cost 3 coin to take. So to get one for free, amazing. But as you can see, it does have constituents. It must be a hero or unique unit. If you can remember, that's the character differentiators on the front. So that means it has to be a gold H or a blue U to be able to activate that special and take a diplomacy cards. That's basically put in place so Valerian can't just kill a lot of group units, which are generally way weaker and way easier to kill, and just take all these diplomacy cards for it. It means to get the diplomacy card, he's going to have to go at a little bit of a tougher subject. So pedigree, one of a kind, very, very powerful card if used strategically. Sometimes that means having your team go after a certain character attacking last with Valerian to hopefully take that defeat with Valerian's attack so he can take a card, rather than just lowering his health and then letting your other player defeat a character, but then Valerian wouldn't get that diplomacy card. Next special on Valerian's card, we already talked about a little bit, the King's Purse. Rolling for coin does not count as an action for Valerian Hightower. However, he cannot roll for coin more than once per turn. So pretty straightforward, but as you can see, Valerian can roll for coin and he can attack because rolling for coin doesn't count as an action. But we made sure to put in there, he can't roll for coin multiple times because theoretically, if it didn't count as an action, you'd think you could just keep on rolling. But as you can see there, he can only do it once per turn, but he can also attack because rolling for coin for him doesn't count as an action. Those are both of Valerian's backcard specials. Fairly simple, but very powerful. Those are what really make Valerian really powerful character. Now we're going to jump into his teammate in this situation, which is Carmela. She has two backcard specials, both having to do with attack. Her first one is Black Powder. Add 1 to Carmela's basic attack when attacking enemy characters with a basic range of 1. So that means if she looks at her opponent's card and they have a basic range of 1, she gets to increase her basic attack against that character. It's important to note, basic range of 1, basic attack, we're using those words on this card because, for example, if Carmela had a really big attack from the diplomacy card deck, like Family Heritage, for example, which we'll get into later, she doesn't get a plus attack with Family Heritage when attacking a character with a range of 1. She only gets the plus attack on her basic ability attack, which is 3. So if she's attacking someone with a basic range of 1, her attack now is 4, unless she has another buff, but we can explain that later. Next special she has is Kill Shot. Instead of using her basic attack, Carmela may defeat any damaged enemy character with 1 life point remaining. This may not sound too powerful, but it's actually very powerful. It has some constituents to it, but the premise of this is you work and whittle down a very strong hero all the way down to 1 life. The next turn, or as soon as Carmela can use an action again, you can just automatically kill that character with an automatic damage that they can't defend, and you don't have to risk trying to roll for dice and hopefully getting a big attack and them not defending. This is a very strong special. As you notice though, it must be a damaged enemy character with 1 life point remaining. If you notice already, we talked about them, Pilgrims are a group card. All group cards almost have 1 life point. This doesn't mean she can walk up to a group card and shoot that group card automatically and kill them because they're not damaged. They started with 1 life point. So it's just important to note, if a character's starting with 1 life point, they're not damaged. Her special only works on damaged characters with 1 life point remaining. So that's Carmela. She's a good skill level 2. She has a good range, middle tier character. Now we're going to move on to Grandor and his team with Rupert. Grandor's first special is Giant's Advantage. This is just a starburst because it's kind of a general thing. It has to do with attacks, but not directly. So that's why it's not the sword and shield. And his other one, Power Pound, is a direct attack. And so that's a sword, 2 swords crossing. So Giant's Advantage. While Grandor is attacking a hero or group characters, those characters subtract 1 from their basic defense. Again, character differentiators coming involved. In this case, it's hero or group cards, not unique units. This is an extremely powerful special Grandor has because, as a giant, he has an attack of 6. So if he goes after a group card with already a pretty low defense and they get 1 less low defense, he's almost guaranteed to destroy them. So Giant's Advantage, very powerful. Just remember, the enemies that it affects are only heroes or group cards, not unique units. Second special is Power Pound. So this is the first time I've ran into one of these. Remember, you can only attack, you only get 1 action per turn. I know I haven't said that yet, but I'm going to say it later. You only get 1 action per turn. So that could be an attack, a roll for coin, or a few other things. Grandor's special on the back, Power Pound, is a unique attack. It's an attack of 3 with a range of 3. As you can tell, his normal range is 2. It's not 3. This kind of allows him to do a special attack instead of using his front side attack. And the constituent for this is every enemy character in range must defend. So you're thinking, okay, Grandor has an attack of 6. Why would I want to use an attack of 3 ever? But if he's around a lot of characters within 3 hexes, a range of 3, who have low defense, he has an opportunity to use this power pound to destroy multiple units in one roll. So for example, if he's around the Pilgrims, who are a group card, they only have 1 life. They have a defense of 3. If he chooses to use power pound, and he, for example, rolls all 3, and they defend with just 2, each one of them have to defend, they all could die in 1 turn, rather than 1 by 1, him taking 3 turns to kill them individually. I hope that makes sense, but a lot of times these special attacks or certain characters have something that allow them to do multiple attacks, but it'll be basically a lesser power attack. Something to notice, some back card specials can work together, or what we call stacking. It's usually pretty obvious. Sometimes it's not obvious. In this case, it does, because there's no thing or specificity that disallows it. In this case, Giant's Advantage can work with Power Pound. He can lower the defense of a group card, for example, down 1. So if he's fighting the Pilgrims, they have a defense of 2, and his Power Pound is still attack of 3. And so if he gets 3, they might not, if he gets all 3 hits, they can't even, it doesn't even matter, because they only can max out at 2 defense because he lowered their defense. And so in that case, they would all automatically die. I hope that makes sense. It's pretty straightforward if you read it. If you need more details, you can go to the special index. Next character, his teammate, Rupert. Very interesting character. His front card abilities are very basic, and sometimes you would think bad, but matched with his back card specials, he's actually really good. So he starts with a coin special called Charlatan. Nothing fancy. Every time Rupert defeats an enemy character, steal 1 coin from that opponent if they have one. Notice there's no specificity to character differentiators. So that could be a group card, hero, unique unit, doesn't matter. Anyone, if they have a coin, you can take it from them if you kill one of their characters. Next special is a unique one. It actually affects attack and defense of Rupert. It's called Swindler's Gamble. While attacking, every basic attack that hits counts as an automatic damage. And while defending, every basic defense that hits blocks all damage. As you might notice, there's a word in there, automatic damage, that you might not know what it is. Words like that are all defined in the glossary, so check there when you ever have questions. I will explain this one in this case, but automatic damage means it's an attack that an enemy can't use their basic defense to defend. So, very powerful. So Rupert only has an attack of 1 and a defense of 1. But when attacking, every time he gets that attack of 1, it's automatic. They can't defend it. Doesn't matter if they have a huge defense, they can't defend it. They just have to take it. Same with defending. He has only 1 defense, but if he hits it, even if Valerian or Grandor attacked with all 6 of their attack dice and hit them all, if he just gets that 1 defense, it blocks all damage. It makes Rupert kind of like a coin flip character. You get it or you don't. You're all in or you're all out. Very fun character, very interesting, and buffs that you can find on the diplomacy card or on the rock, which we'll talk about in a second, all really heavily impact Rupert and make him a lot better. Next, we're going to move on to Functor and Bancroft team. Let's start with Functor. Functor's a pretty basic card, just a strong, heavy hitter Barnburner. His 1 back card special is Rage. It has to do with his attack. Every time Functor defeats an enemy character using his basic attack, increase Functor's basic attack by 1. This is very simple. There's no constituents. Any character, whether it's a group card, hero, or a unique unit, if he kills them, he can increase his basic attack by 1. What that means is, his basic attack is 6 right now. Say he kills a character. Now, from now on, his attack is 7. Kills another character. His attack is 8 now. Every time he attacks using his basic attack. What that means is, the more he kills, the stronger he gets. Something to note, there's a few characters like this who have specials that affect permanently their basic front card abilities. And sometimes, especially if Functor kills like 3 people, trying to remember, wait, who all did he kill? What's his attack? Sometimes what we like to do is take wound markers and put them actually on the side of a card, kind of like this. And what this basically does is allows you to remember, okay, there's something that affects his card. And in this case, I'm going to put a wound marker for every time he gets a plus attack. The games come with 10 wound markers, so you should have enough. And I just basically put them on the side of the card, so he's like, oh, +1 attack. Or you put another one. Oh, his attack's actually +2 now. Just so you can remember as you grow his special. There's very few characters that use this, but some do, and this is just a trick we use as people sometimes would forget, and this would be a good way to remember. Anyways, Functor basically just to know, very strong, and as he kills more, he gets stronger. Next is Bancroft. So Bancroft, he's in a wheelchair, he's an older guy, he has only a move of 3, he doesn't move very far, but he has 2 really cool specials, one having to do with an attack, and one just having a general, it's a starburst, so it's an other basically special. So the first one is Reckless Hate. If Bancroft has been damaged by an enemy character, and add 3 to his basic attack against that enemy character. Note, this means only the enemy character that damaged him. Say several enemy characters damaged him. Every enemy that damaged him, anytime he attacks that person from now on, he gets to add 3 to his attack. So if you can imagine, it basically makes a strategic play with Bancroft is you want to take some damage from someone, but you don't want to take a ton because then you get a big attack against them and hopefully you can kill them before they can kill you. His next special is Deceitful Advantage. Bancroft can only take damage from or be defeated by an enemy characters who are adjacent and cannot be converted. That's kind of 2 specials put into one, but let's just start with the first half. This means a ranged character, say like Carmela, can't shoot from a range. She has to be adjacent to him to be able to attack him. In Carmela's case, she can just be adjacent and still shoot him. As long as there's no hexes in between them, she can still attack. But what this does is it forces people to come towards Bancroft. And quick strategy note, as you can tell, his coin is 1 through 4. That's a pretty good coin. That's over 50% chance of getting a coin. So a lot of times Bancroft wants to stay back a little bit because people can't come get him unless they get up close to him. So he rolls for coin in the meantime. And then once they get up close to him, he can then, once they damage him, attack with a big attack. That's kind of his strategy. Really fun. Really quick, one more thing with the Deceitful Advantage. That was just added in there because we wanted to add that to his character. But conversions happen. Some cards can do them, character cards, and then there's a Diplomacy card can do it. It's very rare, but it's an occurrence that can happen in the game, and he's just a character that can't be converted. All right, moving on to the last of the 4 teams. We got Built-in Grum and the Bilogrums. Let's start with Built-in Grum. Built-in Grum actually has 3 specials. He has 2 that have to do with attack and 1 that has to do with defense. So the first one is Spear Throw. So Spear Throw, just like Grandor's special, is an alternate way to use his action. It's an alternate attack from the front side attack he has. And Spear Throw basically allows him to have a range attack. It's a range of 4, attack of 4. Nothing special. You can only do it to 1 character. And it basically allows him, if he can't reach someone, if he wants to, he can throw a spear at him, basically. It's not his attack of 5, but his attack of 4. It's not too bad. So it's just an alternate strategy we added to Built-in Grum to use so he can have a little range attack if he wants to. And again, just remember, and I'll explain this, each character only gets 1 action, each individual character. So in this case, he can either roll for coin, he can do his front card basic attack, or he can use a special attack like Spear Throw. So just know if he does Spear Throw, he can't roll for coin to do his basic attack. There is a caveat specifically to Built-in, and I'll get into that. So his next one, Rampage. If Built-in Grum defeats an enemy character, he may attack again. Really powerful, and it's another one of those specials that can stack. So say Built-in comes up with his attack of 5, defeats an enemy, he can attack again with his attack of 5 if he's adjacent to someone. But say no one's no longer within the range of 1 for his basic attack. He then can revert to his Spear Throw, because again, Spear Throw is just an attack. Attack of 4, now anyone in a range of 4 has to defend. And if for some reason he kills that person again, he can attack again. Rampage is infinite until he doesn't destroy a character. Obviously, destroying a whole character takes some time usually, so it doesn't always work, but it can be very powerful when Built-in's going against group cards who are very weak. He can attack them and continue his attacks as they go. Last special Built-in has, which actually is affected, this is the first of its kind, but it's really cool, is Hero's Lead. If Built-in Grum is playing on the map with an ally group card, add 1 to his basic defense. So, Built-in Grum, if he's with an ally group card, ally basically means other characters on your team. Usually it always refers to active characters. So in this case, the Bilgrums, who would be playing with Built-in in this game because they're both activated at the same time, since it's the only 2 cards on the team. If he's playing with them, which is the little green G, he gets to add 1 to his basic defense, bringing his basic defense up to 5. But as soon as that card dies, say if the Bilgrums die, he no longer gets that defensive 5. He goes back down to a defensive 4. So it's just important to know it's only while that card is alive he gets that. But it makes it so it's called Hero's Lead. He's there with his team of group cards, and they're all attacking, and they need to all stay alive, and they're more powerful when they're all alive. And that moves on to the Pilgrim special, which is Hero Bond. Only one special, and this is if the Pilgrims are in play with an ally hero, add 2 to their basic attack. This is crazy. Their basic attack is normally 3, now their basic attack is 5. And this is the first group card I've discussed on this video. There's a lot of group cards in the game, but group cards are unique because each one of the individual standees, and in this case 3, get their own action. Coin roll for group cards are always really bad, so you never really roll for coin, but that means they can each attack with 3. But if they're with a hero, and in this case Built-in Grum is a hero, they get to add 2 to that attack. So that means each one of them get to attack with 5, which makes them very powerful. Again, group cards definitely have their downsides, only 1 life, so they're easy to kill. But if the Pilgrims can roll well with those attacks of 5s right at the beginning of they get the first attack and they can roll well, they can do a lot of damage. Okay, so that should give you a good idea of how to read your character cards and understand them and play with them. Now I want to move in to the basic directions of how to play the game. Each turn will consist of a movement and an action phase for every player. So say I'm playing with Grandor and Rupert, I start with my movement phase. Again, as we mentioned earlier, movement phase or movement is optional. You don't have to move. But in this case, I want to move towards the center. Grandor has a move of 5, so I'm going to move Grandor. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Rupert has a move of 4. I'm going to move Rupert. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's the movement phase. I don't have to do that. I can move back, I can move forward, I can move just 3, I can move 2, or I can move none, but I can't move more than what that move says. Then I can move towards my action phase. And it's important to note that as soon as you do an action, you no longer can move your characters anymore. That means if you even forget to move and you just start off with an attack that you're really excited about, you can't move those characters that you forgot to move. It's super important because this requires each player to strategize each turn independent. It's not contingent. So if you're like, oh, I'm going to move a character, see how well he does. If he kills this guy, then I'll move my other character somewhere else. No, each turn has to have its own core strategy. And so if you want to split your characters up, if you want to go both at one character, you got to decide that before you start attacking. So once movement phase is over, which ends as soon as you do an action, you basically start your actions. Actions generally consist of attacking, rolling for coin, certain back card specials, or certain diplomacy cards. It might sound like a lot, but just generally think it's usually going to be attacking or rolling for coin. Also important to note, I mentioned it earlier, but group cards are allowed to each individually take an action. So if you have the Pilgrims, for example, they each can move and attack, or each move and roll for coin, or do one of the other actions I mentioned. Like they don't have a back card special that's an action, for example, but they could potentially use a card in the diplomacy deck that counts as an action for one of your characters. They could play it as one of their actions. But generally in the case of the Pilgrims, it's going to be rolling for coin or it's going to be attacking, which are the actions for those guys. But just remember, they each get to do it, not just once for all of them. They each individually get to do it. Something I really quick want to say too is, as you can see looking through some of these cards when you have them in front of you, some characters have big attacks, low coin rolls. Some people have high coin rolls, low attacks. It's one of those things that's most characters you can kind of tell if they're going to be more tilted at coin or more tilted at attacks. Some characters like Valerian can do both, but it's just important to know that, because if you have a coin roll of 1, you're not going to want to spend too much time rolling for coin because the odds of you getting coin are very low. But if you have a very low attack and a high coin roll, it's probably not the smartest thing to jump into a melee battle fight when you could be rolling for coin and collecting diplomacy cards, which I'll get into next. When it comes to diplomacy cards, this deck of cards on the side, almost always you acquire these by turning in 3 coin. What that means is you would have to roll for coin 3 times over the current course of however many turns, and when you roll, it would have to be one of the basic coin rolls of your characters. And so you'd have to collect 3 coin. And once you get that, you then turn in for 1 card. When you do roll for coin, I really quick want to add this in there. You have to make sure you say which character it's for. So for example, if I have Functor and Bancroft, Bancroft has a coin roll of 4, Functor has a coin roll of 1. Bancroft's great at it, Functor's not. If I just roll and say I get a 1 and I never said which one, I would say, oh, I'm going to choose Functor. And then the next roll, you have the 1 through 4. That's why you have to say I'm rolling for coin for Bancroft or Functor. Otherwise, people will cheat, and if they get the low number on the first guy, they'll just say it's for him. So just make sure you mention this is a coin roll for Bancroft, this is a coin roll for Functor, if that's how you want to do it. Anyways, you collect coin by rolling for coin. So Bancroft, he rolls a 1 through 4, he gets it, he takes 1 coin that turn, but that's his action. Functor wants to do it, his odds are low, but he could get a coin, that would be his action. So the max you could get for these characters per turn is only 2 coin. If they both hit it, you'd only get 2 coin. So then the next turn, one of them would have to get it, and then you would have 3 coin. Once you have 3 coin, with these teams, you only use coin to buy these cards. Nothing else you can use coin for. There are merchants, however, in the merchant expansion who can use coin for a few other really cool things that are really fun and exciting. But for this game, coin gets you these cards. And these cards are very powerful. There's no cards in here that are bad or negative, none that'll damage you or not affect you. There are some, however, that might not be beneficial to you, and there's even 2 that potentially might not work for you. So there's one that's only for Barnburners, one that's only for Noblemen. So say you have all the Barnburners, you get the Nobleman card. It won't work for you because you don't have any Noblemen in your reinforcements. Say you don't have any of those characters out, you're just not going to be able to use it. If you ever get to a situation where you either get that or you get a card that you don't want to use, like maybe at the end of the game it's no longer going to be helpful, you are allowed to turn the card in by putting it at the bottom of the deck, the card deck, and then taking 1 coin back. This was implemented just so people don't get a total waste when they put their 3 coin in. But just keep in mind, these cards can be very powerful. They're very important in this game because when you buy these cards, it's a piece of information that no matter how skilled your opponent is, no matter how well they know your cards and all the cards in the game, they'll never know what card you have behind that. Obviously, they might know the whole deck, but they don't know which one you have. So you can use these cards to very powerfully strategize against your opponents. And now I want to go over a few examples of these cards just so you can get an idea of what some of them have in their opportunities. Alright, so there's several kinds of cards, but I just want to go over some big ones that are powerful and important to know in the game. First one I want to go over is Family Heritage. This is an example of a special attack, and this is a one-time use attack. And it must be used, if you can read the card, attack of 9, range of 3. This counts as an action for the character using it. So what this means is, kind of like we referred to earlier, one of your individual characters has to use their action to use this. So it could be one Bilgrim, or it could be Grandor, or it could be Rupert. But one person has to have an action available to be able to use this card. Once you want to use it, and also when you when you buy a diplomacy card, it doesn't activate till the end of that turn you bought it, unless it says play at any time, and I'll show you an example of one of those cards. So just know, when you buy it, you usually have to put it down. If it's a defense, you can use it as soon as your turn ends if an enemy attacks you, because it's active, but basically you don't usually get to use them till the following turn, unless they say the words play at any time. Anyways, Family Heritage, say you bought it, couldn't use it that turn, you put it down, you know it's coming, then at one point in the game, you have a very strong opponent that you want to kill. And even if you have a weak opponent, you can pull out Family Heritage and it could potentially totally change the game. So attack of 9, that is such a big attack. So you play this, say Pilgrims want to attack someone like Valerian, really try to take them down. They get to roll 9 attack defense dice. If they get, I don't know, like all 9, Valerian's pretty much dead. He can't defend all that. Like, even if he defends it, he's still going to have so many attacks coming through, he won't be able to survive. So something like this is a game changer. So that's what I think this card helps kind of showcase the power of this deck, is that it allows you to get things you could never get just with your characters. That really can be powerful buffs. So this is a really big example. And obviously, if you roll 9, sometimes we played games where it totally whiffs. So it's not guaranteed to be amazing, but generally speaking, very powerful card, Family Heritage. Next one is an example of one of the cards that you can play at any time. So there's a few of these cards, and they're kind of buffs for your character for as long as your character lives. So in this case, we're using Hardened Steel. So there's a few of these. There's one for defense, there's one for range. But Hardened Steel basically increases the basic attack of one of your character cards in play by 1 for the remainder of that character card's life. And as you can read in the small font, this can be played at any time and does not count as an action. Important. So if you bought this, you can play it immediately. And what this does, basically, you put it on your card like that, just to remind you. So in this case, I'll put it on this card, and for the remainder of this card's life, their attack goes up by 1. So in this case, Grandor, his attack is going to go up by 1. So that means he's always going to have a basic attack of 7 while this is on there. And there's a few of these cards in the deck. So theoretically, you could use several of them and stack them. Like, very powerful. There's one for defense. So if you got several of these, you can basically buff out a really strong character in the game. So just keep that in mind. Very powerful. These are throughout the deck too. Again, another reason why this deck of cards can be very important. The next example, this is kind of like just an intense one. It's called Judgment. On your turn, roll the 8-sided dice. If a 6, 7, or 8 is rolled, defeat one enemy character card in play. This is pretty straightforward, but it's basically just like a kill shot. It's like a 50%, a little less than 50% chance, but if you get it, doesn't matter what kind of character it is, doesn't matter how powerful they are, they're just dead if you get it. As you notice, it says on your turn. So it has to be on your turn, and it doesn't count, as you see in the small font, it does not count as an action. So that means you don't have to use a character to use it. You can play it as a player, but just like the rule, you won't be able to use this the turn you buy it. You have to buy it, wait a turn, and then as soon as you end up the turn you bought it, it's active. You can use it the next turn, the turn after, whenever. But a card like this could totally change the game. It's like you just have a tiny weak character at the end, and you have a super strong character who's totally going to destroy him. You could potentially play this and kill that character just on a whim really easily, and it doesn't even count as an action, so you can still attack with your character. So anyways, this is a very powerful card. It can totally shift the game. Next card, another powerful card, Ability Paralysis, but totally different. On your turn, you may automatically take away back card specials from any enemy character card in play. This does not count as an action. Again, doesn't count as an action, but it doesn't say play at any time, so you can't play this. It doesn't activate until the turn ends that you bought it on. This is really powerful because certain characters have extremely powerful back card specials. Back card specials that make them indomitable in some cases. Or characters are only good with their back card specials. I'm going to give you an example of a card we already went over. Rupert. If you remember, Rupert had Swindler's Gamble. If you played Ability Paralysis, and how you play this card is, you obviously can just play it down, or I like to play it on the opponent's card I want to use it on, and they have to just keep it on their card, and it kind of covers up that card's special index, so they just know they can't use their back card specials. But if you remember, Rupert had that special Swindler's Gamble. Every attack's automatic, every defense blocks all damage. But if you look at his front side, he only has 1 and 1. So if he doesn't have that, Rupert's literally just a guy with an attack of 1 and a defense of 1, which means he could be killed so easy, and he's not going to be a threat at all, because an attack of 1 is never going to be great if someone can defend it. So just keep that in mind. Ability Paralysis can be very dangerous for certain characters. And last one I really quick want to go over is one of the ones that are faction specific. So this one's faction specific to the Noblemen. So if you were playing with Barnburners and you got this, you couldn't use it basically. I would say in a beginner game like this, if you only ever had Barnburners, for example, for your team, and you got this, you could talk with the people playing, but I would say you could just turn it in and get another one, because you would never be able to use that at all during any which point of the game. But if you're a Nobleman, this can be very powerful. It's basically a buff that protects Noblemen automatically. You have to roll like a 6 through 8 to be able to attack them each turn or something like that. It makes it very hard to kill a Nobleman. So if you have a Nobleman army, you play this extremely powerful. But it only works for Noblemen. So this is an example of a card that's faction specific. If you don't have that faction at the time, you can't use it, you'll turn it in. This is a good point to actually mention. This game is not faction versus faction. You draft your teams however you want. There's a variety of ways of doing it, and you're going to play with factions, with like Barnburners are going to be with Noblemen attacking other Barnburners and Noblemen, are all mixed together. There's no faction alliances in this at all. In this game specifically, technically we do have every team is their own faction. There's no cross mixing, but in general, you're going to play a lot of games where people are mixed together. So getting this card can totally work when you're playing a big game with several reinforcement piles, because even if you get at the beginning of the game and you don't have any Noblemen out at that time, you might have some in your reinforcements pile, and then as soon as they come out, then you play this on them and then it works. So that's just 5 examples out of this deck of diplomacy cards, but there's a lot more. And some of the cards you saw, there's duplicates or sometimes triplets of them in the deck. And remember, those cards are basically an alternate strategy to what your characters already have. In a game like this, with everyone only having 2 characters, there probably won't be a ton of cards, to be honest, because you don't have that much time to build up cards, and you're not playing with the merchant expansion, which they have really good coin rolls, and they always have tons of coin going in and out, and so they oftentimes get a lot of cards. So the point is in this game, don't expect to get a ton of cards in this specific 4-player game where everyone has 2 characters. Obviously, in Barnburners and Noblemen, you want to go after these cards where you can. If you see like you have a big coin roll like Bancroft has and other people like him, you're going to want to strategize to try to get these cards because these can totally sway the playing field. And they're very strategic because in this game, diplomacy is really important. All right, a few things I missed I want to go back to. First is the rock. So you saw we flipped it over at the very beginning of this video, but what it specifically means is there are specific buffs for your characters. So say you have Grandor and he's on this red attack space. While he's on that plus with the little attack sign on it, his basic attack goes up by 1 while he's on that, which means Grandor's basic attack being 6 now is 7 for as long as he's on this space. If he moves off, it's back to 6, but while he's on here, it's 7. It's plus 1 to his basic attack, not his special attacks, just his basic attack. If he's on the shield, plus 1 to his basic defense. So his defense is 4. While he's here, his basic defense is 5 now. But remember, he's not on this attack anymore. So now his attack's back to normal, but his defense is buffed. If he's on the coin, this is plus 2, which is not 1, it's 2. Plus 2 to his basic coin roll. This doesn't mean if you get the coin roll, you get 2 coin. It just means, for example, with Grandor, if he has a coin roll of 1 through 2, if he's standing on this, his coin roll will be 1, 2, 3, or 4. That means if you roll a 1 through 4, he's going to get a coin, which basically makes him really powerful. Someone like Bancroft, who has a coin roll of 4, if he's on this, his coin roll is a 6. So that means he just automatically gets a coin whenever he chooses on his turn if he wants to use his action for coin roll, because he has a 6 out of 6 chances of getting a coin, because this buffs up his coin roll to 2, which 4, 5, 6 makes it 6. So very good for people like Bancroft, things like that. But just know these are basically buffs that your characters want to be on. These are to help draw people to the middle because they're very powerful if you control them. That being said, only one of your characters can be on one of these buffs at any certain moment. So if Grandor's on the attack, Rupert, if he's on his team, cannot go on one of these other little elements. He must stay off it until Grandor gets off, and then Rupert can go on. And while we have Rupert in our hands, this is where he comes in really clutch. These things will help Rupert out immensely. If he's on this defense like this, he gets 2 defense. And if you remember, Rupert has, if you get any amount of defense, if you get 1 defense, it blocks all. But if you have 2 chances to get 1 defense, it means it's really hard to kill Rupert. So just know certain characters benefit from this even more. And as you remember, Hardened Steel, remember when I explained this, it's a diplomacy card. These can stack. So say Grandor had Hardened Steel. You bought it, you found it, you got it in the deck, you played it. His attack now is 7 regardless of where he's on the map. Then he lands on this, it adds to that. So now his attack is 8 while he's on that spot. So just keep in mind, there's buffs in the diplomacy card deck, and there's buffs on that rock, which is that center trifecta, and it can be very powerful if you use that rock strategically. Also keep in mind, there'll be a lot of people wanting to vie for power for that rock. A quick thing I missed on movement that I really quick want to discuss is just the basic movement abilities. So you move on the hex by hex. So you'd go, if you're Grandor and you're starting at your base, you would move like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If Rupert's in your way, you can't move through characters, whether they're your ally characters or opponent characters. Just keep that in mind. You can't move through them or on their hex. You have to move around. So in this case, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 is his move. So did you see how I couldn't move through Rupert? I had to move around Rupert. That's an important thing to know. And also, there's another movement element to this game that's very important. If you've played war games before, you might be familiar with it. It's called leading engagement rule. So basically what this means is, say for example, Bancroft was adjacent to Grandor at the beginning of Grandor's turn. If Grandor moves away from Bancroft and ends his movement phase no longer adjacent to Bancroft, Bancroft gets to take what we call a leaving engagement attack, which is a standardized attack. It's an attack of 2 versus a defense of 1 always. And every character that Grandor was adjacent to and ended his movement phase unadjacent to gets to use this attack. It's basically, if you can think of it like a stab in the back. This is implemented so to discourage people from attacking, running away, that kind of mentality. Once you get cooked with someone, you have to strategically think, is it smart for me to run away? And sometimes it is. Certain characters, it's worth it, especially if you're adjacent to only one character and you have a big life. It might be worth it for Grandor to move away out of Bancroft, allow Bancroft to try that attack of 2. Sometimes people don't even hit with the attack of 2. Maybe it's 2 shields when they try to attack, and so it doesn't even matter. Or they might get 1 and you defend it. The point is, sometimes it's worth it to move away from a character to get next to a character that you can easily kill. But just know, for however many people are adjacent to Grandor or to a character, and you move them away, and they are stay away at the end of your movement phase for that turn, you have to take that leaving engagement attack. Quick note though, it's important, if he can move out away from engagement, but as long as he moves back into engagement by the end of that movement phase, he doesn't have to take that attack. So I know this sounds weird, but in some cases, he would want to move around a character, because again, you can't move through characters. He can move around them and leave engagement for like a couple hexes, but as long as he comes back and is adjacent to them at the end of his move of that turn, he doesn't have to take leaving engagement. All right, well, that's the main chunk of it, but I want to kind of wind down but end with a very important element to this game that's not necessarily just written on the cards and just easily to understand. It's more conceptual, but it's diplomacy. Very important in this game when playing with more than just a 1v1 game. What this means is basically you need to be discussing with the other people on the team who are all your enemies, but you need to be discussing like, hey, go after this guy, he's really strong, I just lost a character, I'm weak. You gotta be table talking, because if you get siloed and characters are just beating away at each other and slowly destroying each other's teams while there's one character sitting on the side just rolling for coin, not taking any damage, only getting more powerful with these diplomacy cards, it can be deadly. You could just totally waste your time defeating a weak enemy, and then you still have the super strong enemy to attack. And so what we like to say is your weak enemies in this game are actually your your friends, until they become your strong enemies. So you can make alliances in this game. None of them can actually be official. You can't adjust rules. You can't withhold leaving engagement attacks. You can't give them anything. The game still views you as its enemies at all points, but you can say like, hey, I won't attack you for this turn or for 2 turns until this guy loses health or until Grandor dies or something. So it's just so important to be viewing the map. See where people's healths are, see where people's damage and how many cards they have and how powerful they seem to be. And you gotta be discussing, because if you're weak and you're dying and there's a character that's really strong sitting rolling for coin and there's another character just attacking you, you need to be telling them, stop attacking me for at least a few turns. Let's go after that guy and try to attack him and kill him. And yes, sometimes you have to do leaving engagement attacks to get out of intertwinings like that, but sometimes it's worth it because 2 weak people actually stand a chance against 1 strong enemy. But 1 weak person will totally die to 1 strong person, if that makes sense. So just keep that in mind. And a lot of games are like this. Like I remember playing Catan, and that game is big into this. Whenever you have someone almost ready to win with 8 or 9 points, everyone stops trading cards with them because like they're gonna win. And so people stop trading because they don't want that guy to win, because if he wins, then you all lose, basically. So you got to think that mentality of diplomacy. And even a step above this is convincing people somehow. And obviously these cards are pretty straightforward, so you can't like get that sneaky about it. But say you have a very powerful card or a few cards that they don't know you have or whatever, and you don't have to say anything about them, like the diplomacy cards. You could be like, hey, I'm really weak. Look, I only have 1 character left, but maybe you have a card that brings back a character, but you're holding on to it until the end before it's too late when people are almost at their max, and then you pull out that big power move. So the idea is you want to use your opponents. You want to make sure people don't have a target on you, and sometimes you can't avoid that if you're just more powerful, but just keep in mind diplomacy is important whenever playing with more than 1 versus 1. When you're playing 1v1, this game's actually still extremely fun and very well balanced, actually. It's just more high strategic, doing certain things, using diplomacy cards, more just being very strategic because there's no diplomacy, because it's a 1 versus 1. So diplomacy is important. Keep that in mind. Well, that sums things up. I know this video is way long and I'm sure I missed some things, but just know you can go to the rule book. You can check out more detail on all those things. You can reach out to us with specific questions. You can go to Game Board Geek Forum to check to see if there's any answers to these questions you have. But this should give you a pretty overarching view of this game, and we can't wait for you guys to start playing it and giving us feedback. And yeah, we're really excited about this game. It might sound complex, but just know it's heavy on the front end. As soon as you start playing it a little bit, it really does even out and get way more doable. So just keep that in mind. Have fun playing it, and we can't wait to see what you think. Thanks. See you in the next one.